Okay, we are gonna try to review siman Taf Reish Sadi Beis, which we spent a few sessions on, and see what emerges, what develops from this. Hilchos Purim, we are learning about the brachas before the Megillah. This, of course, is the document summarizing that I wrote up everything that we learned in short, trying to summarize around the 5-6 sessions that we had on this. Talk about the brachas before the Megillah. Torah says that someone who reads the Megillah, lains the Megillah, the Baal Koreh, he recites 3 brachas beforehand. Bracha number 1 bracha is Bracha number 2, Bracha number 3, So the last 2 brachas are kind of okay, they overlap with Chanukah, I can understand that. But the question is, why is the bracha by Megillah al Mikra Megillah, as opposed to Lishmoya Megillah? The bracha of shofar is Lishmoya Kol Shofar, to hear the voice of the shofar. After all, most people are hearing the Megillah and not reading anything. One person is reading. We fulfill our obligation by listening, and therefore, seemingly, it would be more logical for the text of the bracha to be Lishmaya, to hear the Megillah. Why then is the text on Mikra Megillah? So there's an Avu Drum who addresses this, who is quoted by many, and the Avu Drum makes a very important distinction between the 2 mitzvahs. By shofar, you have to hear the shofar. If you don't hear it, you don't fulfill your obligation, such as the someone who's deaf, such as if you heard it in an echo, in a type of pit, and it echoed, you wouldn't be good. However, explains the Avu Drum, Megillah, the main part of Megillah is the actual reading. So therefore, that's why if someone who was deaf, let's say he was deaf, but he wasn't a deaf mute, so he read the Megillah, but he couldn't hear it. Or someone who read the Megillah, but he had these new soundproof headphones. Get them a couple $100. You can't hear anything. Nothing. So he's wearing these headphones, and he can't hear it, but he read it. You still fulfill your obligation. Comes out, explains Avu Drum.
Oh, he can't hear himself reading it?
Yeah, he can't hear himself because he's wearing these soundproof headphones.
Can you hear your voice if we go? I don't know.
No.
Anyways.
Comes out that a person who is reads the Megillah fulfills obligation because the ikr is on the kriya, on the reading, as opposed to on shofar. The main part is the shmiya, the listening to shofar. So you'll ask the question, wait a second, if the main part of the Megillah is reading, then how does anyone who listens fulfill the obligation if they don't read it? Very simple. Shameya ka'oina. Listening is like answering, and it's as if you read it. Second answer that the Aliyah Rabbah suggests is the bracha might be, if the bracha, listen carefully to this because it could be tricky. If the bracha by Megillah would have been Lishmaya, we would have thought that you needed to understand it. Because the Aliyah Rabbah brings more proofs. You need to understand what is being read. Now that would be a major issue because a lot of people don't understand what's going on by Megillah. They don't know the words. Shofar doesn't have that issue. You know why? Because shofar is a sound. And therefore, since shofar is a sound, everyone understands it. So you could have the text of Lishmaya. It's for any language, it's a sound. It's always interesting. What? Yeah, okay. You know the general sound. It's interesting because you probably never thought about this, but they talk about how, there's many different languages in the world. And therefore, because of the language barrier, if there's no translator in between, if you're not using tools on the internet to translate, you don't have that in front of you, or it's not working, whatever it is, you can't understand another person. But it's very interesting to analyze what is universal that everyone could understand, even without saying anything. It's a very interesting psychological point. Obviously, it has nothing to do with the Torah we're learning right now, but it's a very interesting psychological point. What is something that universally communicates with someone else, even without saying anything? It's something to, right, the way a person presents himself is a person.
Smiling and frowning?
Yeah, smiling. Is a person thumbs up? Is a person smiling? Is he frowning? Does he look put together? Does he look happy? Does he look like he's ready, like he's strong, right? Does
Hand,
etc. All these
hand signal,
gestures, waving, all these
hand no,
universal things.
hand signals are definitely not universal, but
No,
I think
okay,
no.
okay. If you say so, yeah, if you say, okay, I can't
I don't think
challenge.
no. I'm
The
saying,
the
but I don't.
idea is though, that's what sounds are. You listen to music, you listen to instruments. It's universal, same idea. So it's an interesting point. So if it would have said lishmaya, we would need to understand it. Now that it says al mikra Megillah, don't worry. Even if you don't understand what's being read, you would still fulfill your obligation. Now, another important point regarding the brachos is you answer amen by these brachos, not brachu baruch shemo. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan points out. It's obvious because you're fulfilling your obligation. Shemei Kona would be considered an interruption. Shulchan Aruch says that if the brachos were not said before the Megillah, would you still fulfill your obligation of the Megillah? Yes, you would. Mishnah Berurah says that the Baal Korah remembered in the middle of laning that he didn't say the brachos. You just say them bein aprakim between the chapters of the Megillah. That's what you do. You got to know that on the fly. When would that happen? I don't know. But if it does, then this is the halacha, and that's what you would do. What about shechianu during the day? So we learned about this already a lot. The Torah quotes that according to the Rabbeinu Tam and the Rosh, you have to say shechianu during the day because the main Megillah is during the day. I'd reference you to the Gemara and Megillah and the Bavli, Dalal and Aleph for more details on that. Also, as we discussed in the past, in Tafresh Pei Zion. Yeah, it's Tafresh Pei Zion, if I'm not mistaken, 697. The Ramah or Chashulchan also rule this way as well. that Shechianu should be said during the day. Again, even though you already said it at night because the main reading is during the day. However, according to the Rambam, you should not say Shechianu again during the day because you already said it at night. Torah says that the custom is not to say Shechianu. Interestingly enough, Shulchan Aruch rules this way. At the end of the day, we know that in Ashkenaz places, we do, in fact, say Shechianu again. What about Shechianu on the other mitzvahs of Purim? Do we do it? Why or why not? So obviously, we know what practically that we do not say Shechianu. The obvious question which begs to be asked is, why not? Furthermore, what about Shechianu on the actual day of Purim? Why would you say Shechianu? Would you not say Shechianu? Why or why not? So the basic time when this gets relevant is if you don't have a Megillah, if you're not going to hear the laning by the Megillah, so now you're not going to say Shechianu. So the question is, do you need to say Shechianu on Purim itself or on these other mitzvahs instead? In other words, is it the explanation that no, Shechianu you really need to say on other mitzvahs or on Purim itself? It's just that we say it by Megillah, but you should have in mind when you do it at Megillah that it covers everything else. We say no. Shechianu is only established on the Megillah period, and it just happens to be that now once you do it in the Megillah, we say that you should have in mind that Shechianu will be covered by the other that it will cover the other mitzvahs of the day and Purim itself. That's basically the lumdus behind the shaila. So the Magen Avram, he's the one that made the shla famous. Magen Avram, opening up the siman, called the Aleph, says that when you say when the Shechianu is recited by before the Megillah, that will cover Mishloach Manois and Sudan Purim. So first of all, before we even continue, the Magen Avram doesn't say that it should cover Mishlayach, the Matanos Evyonim. We already addressed that, of course. Number one. Number two is we have to realize this is a two-way street. Number one, the Baal Koyri, or the person reciting the brachas, as we learned about, maybe it could be not the Baal Koyri. He should have in mind that that bracha will cover the other mitzvahs of the day. And number two, everyone listening should have in mind that it will cover the other mitzvahs of the day. Now, the Magen Avram says that you should have this in mind during the Shechianu of the day. Obviously, this is going in the world of what we do, which is we do repeat the Shechianu again during the day, and therefore you should have this in mind during the Shechianu of the day. Now, for those who do not say Shechianu again during the day, you should have this in mind Shechianu at night. brought down that would work, even though you're not really obligated in those mitzvahs at night yet. Because Mishlach Manot Matanot Yonim and Suda are mitzvahs that you have to do during the Purim day. But still, it would work, which I think itself is rather quite insightful. Now, someone who doesn't have a Megillah, let's talk about that. Or he's not going to be able to hear a laining. And this could happen, COVID. A person is very sick and it can't make it to shul or is contagious and doesn't want to go to shul because rightfully so, he doesn't want to get other people sick, whatever the reason is. In that case, you should not say the bracha of שהחיינו on the mitzvahs of Mishloach Manos and the Purim Suda, because it's something that's done every single day, and therefore no bracha was enacted to be said. In other words, there's a concept of we only make brachos, a bracha on something that is recognizable that we're doing for the sake of the mitzvah. There's also a concept, by the way, that I saw brought down, I forgot where, that if you're not saying a bracha on a mitzvah, then you would never say שהחיינו on that mitzvah. That's an interesting concept. People don't think about that. שהחיינו is only accompanied when there's another bracha to piggyback off of. You need something to start it.
What about the Suda? You could say, the Hamotzi or something like that?
No,
No?
that's precisely the point. Why don't we say a bracha on Suda? One of the reasons is it's not recognizable that we're doing a mitzvah. People eat all the time. Right? And therefore, if you don't say a bracha on it, then you can't say שהחיינו on it. And that's precisely the explanation of this Magen Avram. That's why you don't say a bracha. That's we discussed in 2025. Last year, we discussed in Parshas Yisro, if I'm not mistaken, by the Seres Dibros, not Veschan, and I think it was Yisro, why you don't say a bracha, why we don't say a bracha in Kibbud Avim. Suggested around 10 answers over there, and one of them was this. It's not recognizable that you're doing it for a mitzvah because everyone naturally treats their parents nicely, even if you're not Jewish. Or at least that's the way it should be, right? Or until a certain age, they get a little rebellious. But there's a natural tendency in most of the person's life to realize, I got to express gratitude for my parents. Number one, for bringing me into this world. Number two, for feeding me so that I didn't die of starvation and dehydration, etc. So, Mishnah Berurah says, let's say someone had a Megilah at night, and he said שהחיינו. According to everyone, he would not say שהחיינו the next day. That's an important point. It should be pointed out that the Magen Avram doesn't say that one should have in mind when the bracha of שהחיינו and Megillah is said to cover matanos of yonim. Magen Avram doesn't say that. Others mention that one should have matanos of yonim in mind as well. In fact, Pri Megadim says that one should have in mind Mishlach Manos and matanos of yonim. That's what the Pri Megadim says. That when you say the שהחיינו or when you hear the שהחיינו and Megillah, you should have in mind Mishlach Manos and matanos of yonim. The Pri Megadim, however, doesn't mention have in mind the Suda on Purim. He doesn't mention that meal. So obviously, there's a lot of lumdus that you could go into. You could make a whole pilpul shir as to why the Magen Avram left out matanos of yonim to have in mind with the שהחיינו of the Megillah, and why the Pri Megadim left out Suda to have in mind. And in fact, Moshe Sternbach in Shalos Shuvas on Hagos and the Chelik Aleph just turned actually 100. Moshe Sternbach over there says that maybe he entertains the possibility that why the Magen Avram left out matanos of yonim? Because, wait a second. If the Magen Avram would have said matanos of yonim and someone poor comes to you before you heard the Megillah in the morning, maybe you wouldn't give him. Because after all, the שהחיינו didn't cover your mitzvah yet. Oh, we want to make sure that you don't go into that situation. Basically, that's what he said. Obviously, we'll learn more about this when we learn the halachas of matanos of yonim, when exactly that mitzvah applies, and at what time, and regarding the שהחיינו, hopefully we'll come up there more. I'll have to talk about that then. But this is something interesting. It's interesting, not that I did hours and hours of research on this topic, but no one really explains
No, yeah.
the Pri Megadim, why he left out Suda, the Shechianu. No one really reconciles that. But at the end of the day, you should have all the mitzvahs in mind. And by the way, afterwards I saw the Oz V'Hadim Mishnah Berurah. I think also even the Piskei Teshuvos in a footnote points out this subtle difference between the Magen Avram and the Pri Megadim about which mitzvahs they left out to have in mind with the Shechianu. Well, here it's explicit. Pri Megadim says that one should tell the Baal Kori to have in mind when he says the brachos before the Megillah that the Shechianu will cover the other mitzvahs of the day. Furthermore, the people who listen to the brachos should also have this in mind. We already said that Mishnah Berurah. Okay, forget about that.
Who say all the mitzvahs of the day? He should be vague, or people say them.
Have in mind. Have in mind.
No, I'm saying
in his head.
Do I say have in mind the mitzvahs of the day because I dafka want to cover all three, or it's just
Yes.
that I'm not sure what I'm covering?
No, all of them. And I don't know why I didn't write it down, but it's certainly brought down that you should have a gabbai or the balkor, whoever's going to say the brachos before he starts the brachos, says, and I've seen this in all shuls. You probably experience this. You should announce to everyone listening. There's usually this is why I think that this siman is so relevant. There's usually a few announcements that are made before Megillah. Obviously, one announcement is keep your mouth shut. And if you have kids, make sure that their mouths are shut. And if they're making noise, get out of there, go to later Megillah. That's the obvious answer, which unfortunately I remember one time I went to a certain place and it was, I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, how are these?
I have a whole list.
How are these parents allowing this to happen? They're literally this in the middle of the Megillah crying, this yelling, this shit. Get the kids out and go to a later laining. It's so chutzpah. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's one thing that needs to be said. The other thing that's usually said is do not answer B'chu Baruch Shemo and just answer Amen after these brachos, which we just discussed. That's another crucial announcement, which it all comes from this siman. And then the other crucial announcement is the Shechianu that we're talking about, that you should have in mind when the Shechianu is being said, or the Valkori is saying it, to cover all of the mitzvahs of the day. Those are part of the crucial. And then obviously you could go into other minhagim, which we didn't cover in the siman, about different customs throughout the Megillah, the banging for how much you can make up, how much are you going to bang over here, this, that, all that.
No, this announce is only in the day, right? You don't make any announcements by now.
No. So if you're in a place that they're only going to do Shechianu at night, and not again during the day, then you should make that Shechianu announcement at night. But if you're going to be in our places, then you don't announce that at night. You only announce that during the day. So those are really, I think, two of those announcements, not the silencing the children, because we didn't really learn about that so much over here. That's going to come up in other places, though. That's going to be a big rip for the Mishnah Berurah. That's chinuch. You're bringing the kids to smack the table so you got to, we'll talk about that another time, The problem is that certain kids, I see it over here also. When sometimes I come, kids, they come in the main shul, they're climbing up on the stage in the front, they're going to the women's section. I say, learn some Torah HaKadosh, get out. Obviously, it's not during davening. The kids, they take me serious. And now let them get it in the system from a young age. The shul, the actual main shul, is not a place to play. It's not a playground. It's not. The problem is that kids get used to it as a playground when they're younger. And then when they get older, they never get that out of their system. Now, they don't think it's a playground when it's older, but they think it's a kiddush without food. That's what it is. Schmoozing, the yapping. Some people, they have no embarrassment. They don't even whisper when they talk. They just do it loud. I mean, it's such arrogance, so disrespectful. But anyways, that's the story with the Shechianu. Now, Mishnah Berurah says that an ovel who reads the Megillah should not say Shechianu. I didn't write it over here. We learned a lot more about this. About an ovel. Some say maybe he shouldn't even lain at all. The person who's going to do the laning should say the brachos. Others say if he's the best one there, if he's been doing it for so many years, so then for sure he should continue laning. So you have different discussion about that. Some even are lenient to say he could say the brachos, which it seems like he shouldn't from the Mishnah Berurah. He didn't entertain that possibility. But this is what to talk about there.
There's so much to say the Shechianu for him, right?
Yeah, all the other brachos. All the brachos.
All the brachos.
Yeah, not just Shechianu. Just do all of them. You don't want to split up the brachos. What about the brachos after the Megillah? Torah says that a place that has the custom to say the brachas after laning the Megillah should do so. Nowadays, the Torah says the minhag, the custom is to do so. The bracha is haravis, yivein, etc. We discussed why there's 5 terminologies: haravis, yivein, adanis, etc. Why there's 5. Torah says that you're not allowed to talk during this bracha. Why does this bracha begin with baruch? That's really the question. Isn't it a bracha smucha l'chaverta? Doesn't it piggyback off of the brachas before the laning? Beis Yosef quotes the Ran, who says that a massive chiddush. His bracha isn't on the Megillah itself. Rather, it's an independent bracha that was enacted on the miracle. By the way, the Megillah wouldn't be considered an interruption because it's similar to Shema and the brachas of Shema. Shulchan Aruch says that if the brachas after the Megillah weren't said, one would still fulfill his obligation of Megillah. Ramah says that the custom is to say Asher Hiniya at night. This should only be said with a congregation, the Asher Hiniya. Someone who faints in the Megillah of in the middle of laning Megillah, or is unable to continue. The Magen Avram says that if someone faints in Megillah, the second Baal Koreh needs to begin from the beginning of Megillah. However, this is according to the Magen Avram. However, the second Baal Koreh doesn't need to say the brachos before the Megillah again. This ruling of the Magen Avram is very surprising. Many argue on this ruling and hold that the second Baal Koreh can continue from where the first one left off. Excuse me. So that's basically how we hold at the end of the day. I didn't write it over here, but yeah, I'm gonna write a note to so that I don't forget what to really add on over here. But in particular to this ruling, most of the time you wouldn't go back to the beginning. The Kaf HaChaim, some sorry for others, they go into differences as to what's going on over here. Is it the day laning? Is it the laning at night? At night, says the Kaf HaChaim, it's Tichet Tzibura. Everyone's very hungry from the fast. It's a burden on the congregation. Therefore, they don't need to go all the way back to the beginning. If they want to, as a tzibur, that's the type, they're very pious, then certainly they can. So it depends on different factors. Know your audience, know your congregation type of situation over here. So it could depend on that. Talking during the Megillah. Obviously, talking is a big no-no. Shulchan Aruch says you're not allowed to talk when the Megillah is being lain. The Magen Avram is actually lenient. He says that the Baal Koreh could talk. However, the Mishnah Berurah and Samach Beis says the custom nowadays is not to talk at all. One shouldn't make any sound effects during the Megillah laning as well, unless it's needed for the Megillah laning. So you're doing for Haman and you want to make sounds. You could do that because that's for the Haman. But just in the Megillah to start making sound effects, you wouldn't want to do that.
Wait, if you go to laning and there's no, they don't make sounds during Haman's name. Is that a problem?
If the Rav makes sound, what, say again?
If they don't make sounds during Haman's name,
that's fine. We'll learn about that more in a different siman. That's not going to come up here. The point to mention over here is that there's actually a difference between who's talking. It's actually more of a this is surprising. I think this halacha, people aren't aware of it. It's more of a halachic issue for someone listening to the Megillah to talk than the person laning the Megillah to talk. And the simple reason is, when you're listening to the Megillah and talking, so now the train's leaving without you. You're missing it. As opposed to when the person laning the Megillah is talking, train's not leaving without him because he is the train. He's the conductor. The guy who drives the train. Conductor. That's the conductor, is the guy who drives it? He's the conductor. Yeah. So he's running the show over there. So that's a difference, but nowadays you shouldn't talk. Can someone who already fulfilled his obligation of Megillah lain for others? Yeah. So could he lain it for others? Shulchan Aruch says that even though someone already fulfilled his obligation of Megillah, he could still read the Megillah for others. Magen Avram says that if he is reciting the bracha for women, he should recite the bracha l'shmaya Megillah. As we learned in Siman Tafresh Pei Tes, Siman 689, there's a difference between the obligation of men and women when it comes to Megillah. For men, there's more of a mitzvah on the reading as opposed to women, it's the hearing. See you there for more details. You should read for the women specifically after you already fulfilled this obligation in shul with the congregation. So that's a important point to mention. Pri Megadim says that he can lain for the women first, if he has in mind that he will not fulfill his obligation with the women laning, and then afterwards he can lain or hear laning with the congregation. The idea is that you want the male to fulfill his obligation with the congregation of 10 males. A lot of times if you read for women first, it's not going to be another laning for men. So keep that in mind if you're planning on doing that. It can be an issue. We can learn something very interesting from this ruling. Someone can fulfill the obligation of others, even though he needs to fill his own obligation, isn't filling his own obligation. In the letter of the law, at least, which is a fascinating idea. Furthermore, it should be pointed out that practically regarding the Megillah laning at night, if a Baal Koreh will lain for women first, he won't be able to lain the Megillah or hear the Megillah afterwards with the congregation. Right? I already made that point.
That one?
I already made that point before. Practically, if you're going to lain for the women first, you're not going to be able to find 10 men to lain with, to fill your obligation.
Fill your obligation for what?
Megillah.
Technically, you could fulfill your obligation to eat. No?
You could, but we're saying it's better to do it with the congregation. Okay, so that's what there's a big discussion about eating eating before Megillah over here. Shulchan Aruch rules like the Trumas Hadeshin, we're obviously not going to hold this way, but it's an interesting ruling, which says that someone who has a slight extenuating circumstance and isn't able to go to shul and needs to wait until after the entire congregation reads the Megillah. However, long sentence, it is difficult for him to wait so long while he was still fasting, is able to hear the Megillah laning while it's still day from Plaga Mincha onwards. In other words, what this means in English is if the only time, what the Truman session is saying is it's better to lain Megillah earlier rather than break your fast and hear the Megillah regular time. Ramah says that it's prohibited to eat before hearing Megillah, even if the fast is difficult. All right. Taz says that this is like Shema. It is certainly prohibited to sleep before hearing Megillah. Magen Avraham says it is implied from the Maharil that even a sick person is not allowed to eat before reading Megillah unless he is dangerously sick. Wow. So eating before the Megillah is a no-no. Shar Hatzion questions this ruling because someone who is sick isn't obligated to fast at all, as stated in Siman 686 Tafresh Pei Vav, which we learned. If someone's sick fasted, he certainly is obligated to wait until after Megillah to break his fast. Mishnah Berurah says that someone who is weak and delaying eating will damage his health, and he can become sick, and tasting is enough for him, is allowed to eat. However, he should ask someone else to remind him to hear the Megillah. So this was only for a sick person, this idea, as we learned the reasoning yesterday. Magen Avraham says that the custom is to read the Megillah while it is still day in order to make it easier for people and pregnant women so that they don't need to fast too much. Machsi Kashekal quotes Pri Chadash, who says that the Megillah must be read after 3 stars emerge. This is going to be the general halacha. This is how the Mishnah Berurah is going to hold at the end of the day. You got to wait for 3 stars to come out to read the Megillah. You cannot do it before, no matter what. Pretty much, someone who reads the Megillah before this will not fulfill his obligation according to the Pri Chadash. So you got to wait till 3 stars emerge. It should be pointed out that another reason why this Magen Avraham is hard to understand is because pregnant women don't need to fast on Taanis Esrei. All discussed in Siman Tafresh Pei Vav 686. Lavush explains that it was enacted playing the Megillah before breaking the fast in order that one won't get, so to say, caught up and then not hear the Megillah. Can Megillah be lain before sunrise? This really isn't our siman, but it comes up as a tangent. Magen Avraham says that someone who has a slight extenuating circumstance may hear the Megillah before sunrise if it is after dawn. Technically speaking, it would work. That rhymes. This is also discussed in Siman Tafresh Pei Zayin 687. Shulchan Aruch relates that the time to listen to the Megillah during the day begins from sunrise and goes until the end of the day. Someone who heard the Megillah from dawn would be di'evid, post facto, fulfill his obligation. Mishnah Berurah rules that someone who had extenuating circumstances may hear the Megillah lechachila, preferably even from dawn. It would work. If it's extenuating circumstances.
Right, like these people have to go.
Any questions, comments, and anything on this review whatsoever?
They had that minion They have like this, I think they try to lain, that they daven dawn, but they try to lain by nates, I think. I don't know, some people, I guess when they have to work, still,
Yeah,
people.
If you don't have enough time for that, you could even lain before. David, you good?
We're talking about if you lane Megillah before Nate's.
Yeah.
That means also too that you're doing a lot before Nathan because you also laning and stuff.
That is correct.
You're diving all all the Shemona Esrei, you're laning, and then
That's
you have
correct.
Megillah. Yeah.
So
Laning after.
we're
What do
not
you
going to
say it
continue with
after?
hilchos Purim. I think we're going to do hilchos Pesach next.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I think
No?
that's smarter. I think
Whoa,
percentage-wise,
whoa.
if you break down the percent that we
I
learned
mean,
of hilchos Pesach versus the percent that we learned hilchos Purim, we're definitely covering ground. But I think hilchos Purim we're close to 30, 40%, and hilchos Pesach we're more like 15%. We did a lot in Pesach though. Don't get it wrong. Just Pesach is much longer. I know. I know. I'm sure he still wants a Chiras Chametz. I'm sure he still
yeah,
wants.
here's something.
So that's what we're gonna do at Pesach, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, we'll continue next time. Have a
Here's
good day.
comments.
Good Shabbos. Welcome to.
What
Yeah.
Wait, so what are we doing? What are we doing on